Well, howdy there, crew. It's your buddy Soil. Haven't done a video in a while, so I thought I'd get one put together for the current, shall we say, arrangement of events. So we can all get together on our own memorandum of understanding. So I'm sure many of you have been keeping up with the back and forth, the ending of Operation Epic Fury, as it was known, and entering into some sort of, at least the framework or appearance or shell of, some sort of agreement or memorandum of understanding, as it's being tossed out and around and about and back and forth. The end to this operation and movement into the next phase, which is going to apparently be capitulation, ending of hostilities. A lot of the details aren't known because they're not being made public. And it's simply one more entry into the column of entries that has been purposeful deception toward not only the American people, but the global public body at large. There's been a lot of, you can't really call it lying because it's statements with purpose, it's misdirection, and I wanted to put together something at this point, even though the future is not certain on what exactly is going to happen. If this MOU in its current form is even going to move forward fully and be implemented, is it itself a huge pile of misdirection on a state level? Obviously, our greatest ally is not happy with it. The ISR firsters in the U.S. government are not happy with it. But no, it's all part of a campaign of deception, of the discombobulation. You've been discombobulated. You, the American taxpayer, the American citizen, and many of the other people in the world have been shot with the good old discombobulation ray gun right between the eyes. I have to apologize. It's very windy here today, so if you hear some stuff in the background that the mic picks up, it's because of the gale force winds outside. We're supposed to have severe storms later. Another reason why I wanted to put a video together, and I don't know if I'll have the ability to do a live tonight, like I usually try to do on Wednesdays. Anyway, back to the subject at hand. I think I've watched with bewilderment the chat boxes and comments on X and channels that I try to see and try to watch, the public sentiment on take shape, comments, things like that. And I really do think much of the misunderstanding and the point of views that I see out there, it's not just the psychological protection mechanisms or TDS, and TDS works both ways these days. You either have TJ, Team You Jesus, derangement syndrome, or TJ, what's the best way to put it? Not derangement, but delirium. Both sides of the scale. TDS, TJ delirment, delusion syndrome. That's what I'm trying to spit out. Sorry. You're delusional that the 10D chess is still in play, and we're on top of this thing. The U.S. military and war machine is a magic wand. You can wave it at anything and get your way. It's delusional thinking. And I'm doing my level best to not get on a bunch of different places and type in the words, "I told you so." I'm doing my best not to do that. And it's not a boastful claim. Anyone with 2 brain cells to rub together that watch this stuff could tell you where this was going to lead. This entire operation was a boondoggle from the very beginning. It should have never been attempted. Because now we're going to have to, you and I and other people that just want to be left alone, want to go about their business, want to raise their families around the world, have been horrifically impacted by this. And in some ways that you're not even aware of yet, because they haven't made it through the pipeline to come out and do 1-2 punches to your pocketbook, to your way of life, to your standard of living. And that's where some of the misunderstandings start. People think in modes, including our quote-unquote leaders. And the more I watch conflict areas around the world and the nature of conflicts and the things that happen, the more I believe that the proponents of generation warfare, as in 3rd, 4th, 5th generation warfare, are onto something. And I've been a student of that for quite some time. And there are concepts from, it's defense thinkers like Daniel Abbott. These aren't my theories, of course. These are concepts that, military strategists like Bill Lind come up with, after going back and looking at historical record and how things happened. And a part of the paradigm, because they're not really ages. Okay, 3rd, 4th generation warfare, they have their majority of application in different ages or epochs of historical timelines, but there's different layers of each can appear forward and backward of time. And what most of what we're suffering from when we're trying to make sense of these military engagements and what they mean to us and how they change our country's standing in the world and power projection and geopolitical consequence and all of that stuff, it comes from a lack of understanding that these elements are present. And when I say the phrase, the U.S. military is not a magic wand, it comes from understanding that, yes, you can have a incredibly, no peer near the U.S. warfighting machine, its geospatial intelligence, its ability to project force around the world, the size and effectiveness of its surface navy, the readiness and professionalism of its troops. You can have all that to the top, maxed out, unbeatable. But if you don't pay attention to all layers of generational warfare in a conflict, you open the door to basically defeat, capitulation, ineffectiveness, of still conjuring a boondoggle where there once was no boondoggle. And I think a lot of people view the tactical approaches to warfare currently, waging warfare, in the majority of one, maybe a few elements of the following generational warfare ideals. And they don't get it, they're blindsided by the fifth generational warfare applications. They're thinking in 3 and maybe 4G warfare doctrines, and they get blindsided. So let me paint the example. We have the U.S. military, okay? The finest, most powerful military in the world. Almost no peer, except maybe for China, but that's a different topic, because we're talking about the Iranian angle. And the Iranians have their friends, the Russians and the Chinese, that have helped them, and that does play a role. But if you're looking at third and fourth generation warfare, where it's about military movement of units, speed, stealth, surprise, bypassing enemy points, bases, their troops on the ground. That's third generation and a little bit of fourth generation warfare tactics and mode of thinking. And that is not how the Iranians largely have forced us to this point. They have, in some elements, by rocket attacks on U.S. bases and U.S. interests, and those conventional tactics were utilized as well. It's an important part of it. Physical destruction on the ground. What narrowed the field, what closed the gap, was their utilization of fifth generation warfare tactics and total strategy. They've been preparing for some sort of conflagration with the United States military and U.S. executive institutions for a generation. They've thought this through. So that's why when someone in the administration says, well, no one's had the balls to do... No. It's not about the balls. It's about the brains. Previous leaders listened to their analysts, and they quickly realized that even though, yes, it's a possibility to topple the current IRGC regime, it would take a level of blood and treasure on a scale that would be wholly unsupported, because the benefits to our country and the American people and our global partners would not equal the cost. So they didn't do it. It's not that they didn't have the cojones to do it. There was probably some times in there where it was pretty close as far as an option on the table, I would imagine. But they looked at the total cost, the total strategy. The current leaders, quote unquote leaders of our country, they looked at they looked at doing this, waging 5G warfare only on the American population. Because yes, your own government can wage 5G warfare on you to serve its needs. And unlike the third generation warfare and the fourth generation warfare, 5th generation warfare is almost ideally tailored to being a double-edged sword against both your enemy population and your domestic native population. So, to be clear, let's go ahead and let me move over to Grok here, just so you can see the differences. Because I believe the mindset that people have is stuck in these other generations. And they don't realize that the might of the U.S. Navy and the stealth and firepower of the U.S. Air Force can be effectively countered by disrupting economic trade. You don't understand because it's on a time scale that's longer than kapow. Watching a 10 or 15 second video clip of something being destroyed through a munitions explosion. When they closed that strait and they started targeting oil production facilities of the GCC countries, they were unleashing munitions, quote unquote, on the United States. But they were economic munitions. And the damage hasn't rippled through yet. The markets, supply chains, I mean, there's apparent damage there currently, but we have yet to see the full scale of those strategic movements. And the Iranians were pretty clear about the layers of response that they were going to do. And the people in our administration that appear to only recently have gotten a hold of TJ's ear understood. And you were kept from knowing about these things due to narrative control by our own government, by fact checks that weren't really fact checks from CENTCOM, by laundry fires, by big graphic boards of strikes, and the size of the little icons of explosions on maps. You were led to believe that this was just this wholesale, uncountered destruction of the RGC. And did the U.S. military blow up a lot of stuff? Yeah. But in the whole picture of strategy, did it matter? No. Obviously not. Because now we're trying to find a way out. And for all the criticism that TJ earns for stepping into this boondoggle, I'll give him credit for at least now trying to wade his way back out before he drowns in feces from the floodgates that he opened because he was convinced by our greatest ally that it needed to happen. At least now he's smelling what he jumped into. The downside is he drugged you along with him and told you to smell the roses and check your bank account the whole way down. You can't jump into a giant boondoggle, a giant tub of excrement, and think you're going to be able to wade out clean later. It doesn't work that way. So you were discombobulated right between the eyes. Here, if you're watching on YouTube and not just listening, it might be hard to see this on a phone screen, but basically I asked Grok, what are the differences between 3G, 4G, and 5G warfare? And you guys can, I would encourage you to do some self-study on this on your own. But to boil it all down, sum it up, third generation warfare, you think of the tactics of World War I, World War II, attrition style, large losses of men, material, territorial gains. Fourth generation is where the previous World War II, Korea, blends together into Vietnam. Insurgents, terrorists, guerrilla networks, psychological operations, media propaganda, low-intensity tactics, nipping away at the foot of the greater, occupying force, rather than a total domain defeat militarily. You just slowly suck away the will to keep going. The cost becomes too high. And one of the downsides of doing that, and this is fourth generation warfare, is considered to be like the Great War on Terror era. Insurgents, but it has its roots back in Vietnam and Central America. Things like that. You have elements of 3G. You still have kinetic warfare in there. But now you've got this other blend. The line between civilian and insurgent blurs. And it's more cost effective for the weaker actors because it exploits political and economic vulnerabilities. Okay? So with Operation Epic Fury, and going forward, because the battlescape has changed so dramatically, and due to the arrangement of the world's resources itself, we're solidly, I believe, in fifth generation warfare territory with this conflict. We send stealth bombers and other airframes and use standoff munitions to attrit the enemy's stockpiles of missiles, drones. It's quote-unquote Navy. The IRGC Navy that we sunk were ships that didn't matter. That's not really what they use to control the Strait, obviously. You can see all this stuff now. Now that the big graphic cards that were used during the Department of War press releases are out of date and collecting dust and laying haphazardly in a closet somewhere. This is how you were bamboozled. And you could boil it down and say you were lied to. Well, yeah, you could use that terminology. But it's more than that. It is purposeful disinformation on both sides and from all directions. And that's why we've been discombobulated. So understanding how these elements work, how everything fits together, will help discombobulate you, will help you from being further discombobulated or get discombobulated again in the future, no matter who's shooting the discombobulator gun. Fifth generation warfare. Primary domain is non-kinetic. It's info and perceptions of institutions, of general populace, which has economic and political repercussions, which equal results in the geopolitical and military domains. The actors can be states, non-states, they can be individuals like myself. I am part of the fifth generation strata, if you will. So I'm telling you about it. And your knowledge of this layering of warfare and this doctrinal approach will change the mindset if you truly want to understand it. I mean, a lot of people are like, BS, whatever. It's armchair general stuff and circus clown stuff. Yeah, part of that's true. I didn't go to the war college. Okay, this is my own self-education and interest and curiosity, and I'm sharing it with you. Because you're already part of the fifth generation domain, simply by existing in the world. And the battlefield is everywhere. It's your own cognition. Cognitive, it's in the cyber domain, social media, think tank posts, posts like mine, the Lego videos, CENTCOM fact checks. The battlefield is everywhere because the battlefield is the human mind and perception. And that's the goal of 5G warfare, is to manipulate perceptions and your behavior. And the methods to do so is cyber, artificial intelligence, disinformation. I'm reading straight from this key differences summary chart that old Grok has provided me here. All the large computational centers that are drinking our freshwater reservoirs dry and driving up electrical costs. That is our country gearing up, a little late, but they're gearing up for the domestic front of 5G warfare. And that's cognitive warfare waged on its own citizens. How does that fit in the Fourth Amendment? Well, I'll leave that to constitutional scholars and attorneys. I'm not equipped to tell you how that jives even remotely. But no one's doing a damn thing about it. So, my First Amendment, my Second Amendment, my Fourth Amendment, my Fifth Amendment, good luck. Because the application of those liberties requires everyone to agree with you. And the size, the barrel size of the coming discombobulation gun when these centers are put in place, and the freshwater aquifers and rivers in the American West are completely dry, and you're paying, $1,500 a month in electrical charges, and you've got a 50 to 70 decibel constant hum from cooling tower fans that you can't escape all across your small town. Good luck, people. Okay? Those centers, those computational centers aren't for 30 millisecond generation of cute kitty videos. They are to process metrics and data in near real time. So if you go to buy something somewhere at a certain time and the powers that be decide that would be dangerous for you to have or to acquire, you're not going to get it. Anyway, that's another topic for another video or live stream. It's currently something that's sticking into my craw pretty tight right now. Visibility is low, deniable, invisible. It's our fact check, and we turned off all the satellites that allowed the OSINT bros to fact check our fact check. So our fact check must be factual. Check it. Nothing screamed apparent victory more than turning off all the private and commercial available satellite data in that region. That's when everyone knew victory was near. It was going so well you had to be blinded from the facts on the ground. The really bad news, crew, the duration of 5G warfare is continuous, ongoing. Now that we're here, it will be waged until the next generational layer is going to be applied. And what that's going to be, I don't even want to venture to think about that yet. I don't even want to speculate about it yet. As far as perceptions go, another big thing is the mindset that you have. When you look at a problem, or you look at the players of a coming conflict, and you underestimate them, you overestimate your own abilities, your own capabilities, and you, for whatever reason, I've seen many, many comments that call the Iranians terrorists. In some senses, they are. But in the very literal, true sense, they are simply an opposing force with opposing goals for their own region, their own homeland, than ours. And they've prepared for this. They're not insurgents. They're the citizens of their own country. And I saw many, many people underestimate them by calling them terrorists in the Great War on Terror insurgent sense, the Afghani sense, where they're simple people who live in caves and fire AKs in the air and, jump and dance on rugs like the Houthis in tents. They might appear to be this way, but guys that are truly honest, folks that are truly honest about what happened in the Great War on Terror will tell you highly technical, highly capable, highly trained professional military was often defeated by simple tactics like sleep cycles and understanding their own terrain, understanding our technology and how to make simple measures to circumvent it. Doesn't matter how complex the machine is, there is a vulnerability point somewhere. And simpletons, cavemen-like insurgents don't figure out the vulnerabilities in such technology and then use it decisively. We underestimated these people. I didn't. Let me correct it. Way too many of the American populace had the wrong picture and the false idea in their mind about the IRGC and the Iranian people, and still do. I still see it to this day. I still see it in comments, and it's just it's simply it's a refusal to educate yourself, and then you're surprised. Wind is really picking up out there. But then comes the surprise. How did this happen? We were fighting cavemen with clubs. No, you weren't. You convinced yourself that you were, but you weren't. All could have been avoided. Never should have happened. So understand the layers of generational warfare, where you fit into it, how it's being waged against you by more than one party. It's being waged against you by a party you think is on your side. In many ways, the citizen is on their own. The current order of things is going to be reshuffled. And that was in the cards from the beginning. Even if you look at this map of Iranian strikes by, I forget who put out this, I'll have to credit them in the description. But this is going to change now. Fifth Fleet bases. A lot of this is going to go away. And even deeper than this, this conflict had writing on the wall stretching back to World War I. Educate yourself about the Sykes-Picot Agreement in 1916. It was between the United Kingdom and France after World War I. And it was supposed to be, it was basically a secret agreement to carve up territory and ignored ethnic and tribal lines in the Middle East. And it was a betrayal of the Arabs who had helped the Allied powers in World War I defeat the Ottoman Turks, which were part of the Axis powers. And the forging of this agreement between the UK and France was actually, it was secret, and it was uncovered by the Russian Bolshevik government in 1917. It was betrayed the Arabs, it betrayed the promises the UK made the Arabs. If you go back and look at the Hussein McMahon correspondence from that time, anyway, I'm going to end up going down a rabbit hole on this, but the point I'm trying to make is the borders that you see in this picture are artificial. Even though the OSINT bros, many of us that pay attention to geopolitical happenings and try to make ourselves aware, you have to understand the countries that you see in front of you is an artificial construct. And they're propped up. The lines are drawn for all the wrong reasons. And they were drawn 100 years ago. You're going to see some of these entities on this map. You're going to see, it won't be overnight, but it'll take time. There's several entities there. There's several lines in the sand, so to speak, there, that are only there because of U.S. military presence and the presence of the U.S. petrodollar as a force in the world. Once that's gone, those lines will have to change or disappear. And many of those lines only remain and have only remained there in the last 40, 50 years because of the United States of America and our force projection in this part of the world. And that's now changed. So it's not over, but we might be done as far as this current chapter is being written. There's another, our greatest ally in the region, who do not want to see the dominoes fall in this order. Because they, crap, I said the word, I'm going to have to edit that out. The greater ISR project, unless the dominoes fall in a certain way, and we, the U.S. military and U.S. presence and effort and blood and treasure is some of those dominoes. And if we take those dominoes away, it's not going to go in the right order, and they're going to have to go to plan B and C, and I don't even want to speculate at this point what that's going to be. I have an idea, but we're going to have to let some time go by. And then you have well, before I leave that topic, part of the plan all along by our greatest ally was to collapse this and still boot us out of the region. Because they do not want any partners in what they have plans for next. They need us to sacrifice and then leave. So the grand design from that point of view was always that we lose our foothold. Because our foothold's only there because this conflagration was coming in some shape, form, or order. But we were meant to eventually get booted from there anyway. At least as part as ISR's plans go. But yeah, here's the ethnic map, rough ethnicity of the Iranian people. And this doesn't even count the other aspects of their makeup. Ethno-religious. This is just ethnic groups. Understand what you're looking at before you try and kick it in the teeth. Many of us fail to do that on many, many levels. And here we are. Well, that pretty much wraps it up for what I wanted to put out today, crew. So wherever you are, whatever time you're watching this, I hope you're safe and secure and you're preparing for the fallout from all this, which is a great many things because the ripples, people are celebrating gas prices falling a couple cents here and there at the pump. You have no idea. Some of you do. Those of you that have been listening to me for a while probably can put it together, but many of you have. If you're watching me for the first time, please stick around. I'm going to be putting out more of these in the future. Look at my old material. You'll see a lot of things end up coming to pass, as I call it. Not that I'm some super genius, I refuse to let my ideas and my inner voice be painted over by other groups. I like to think critically, and I try to think logically and reasonably without the mind traps of other doctrines, religion, things of that nature. And I usually, if you practice critical thinking and using reason, and you do your research and do your due diligence, you usually can figure out what's going to happen. It's really not that hard. And not getting lost in the sauce, not seeing the forest for the trees. A lot of the OSINT bros track flights, look at, down to the minute what's happening. There's no need for that. Yes, it's exciting to watch, and it's a fun hobby for many out there. I get it, and there is some tactical and long-term gains from doing that, from acquiring that information. But as far as breathlessly reporting a flight from Tehran to another place, that's the forest for the trees, my friends. So keep thinking, and I'll come back. I'll come back again, crew. Be safe. Take care of one another. And yeah, just be good to one another. That's all I ask. Later.